Yeah, I'm excited for this morning. I know many of you know Keith and Carly, or at least you've seen them both just lead us in worship in the main stage, and then even what Keith has done here with worship and the hymn sings. We are very grateful for this family and all that they are doing and how God is using them here at Compass. But I want to make sure that we take this opportunity, as we do with many people that we get on stage here, whether it be our pastors or whether it be other visitors that we are able to sit down and get to know a little bit more, is to get to know the Hancock family and, how God is using them, and then even their background and their story of how they got here. And so I'm excited to be able to talk to Keith and Carly this morning and get to know them a little bit more. So again, you can have more of that connection with them. You can continue to be praying for them and seeing how God is using them and, the background that where they've come from up until this point. So without further ado, hello, Keith and Carly.
Hello.
All of that intro. Now I get to hello. Well, yeah, let's talk about your background a little bit. Keith, I'll start with you, but yeah, tell us your testimony and a little bit of who you are and where you grew up and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, born in Inglewood, and grew up really in Long Beach. That was where did most of my elementary school years there. Grew up at Long Beach Grace Brethren Church with Dick Mayhew. Some of you guys may know that name. And my first my childhood church though was Cypress Evangelical Free Church. That's where I was when I was saved, and was really involved in the youth group there. Fortunately, my parents were both really strong believers. I remember my dad reading his Bible. That was one of my earlier memories of him, was that I'd always see him with his Bible. And that always just spoke to me about the priority and the importance of that. And our lives revolved a lot around church and church activities. And we got a chance to serve a lot. And I was involved in my high school's worship team at this church, and so I kind of got an early start playing music. And but yeah, I had some really great experiences at Cypress EV Free, and through going to camps and kind of revival type camps when I was in junior high and high school, and was saved at the end of my junior high years. Served in my high school's leadership team, where we would do evangelism trips and lead Bible studies and that kind of thing. But it really obviously was the music that where was going to be, I could sense at that age, was going to be my main service point in the church. And so I was playing in my my high school worship band. And I clearly remember my first experience doing this. When you're a prideful high schooler and you think, oh, I can't wait to get on stage and get to showcase my skills, and maybe there'll be some girls that will take an interest in me. And so my first time ever being on the high school worship band, I definitely was way too prideful, and I remember the first chord that I played, and the keyboard died, and I knew that was God, just showing me this is not about you, and this is it was very different from, and that of course through those experiences taught me a lot about worship, and started working in churches in college. And I was going to college locally here at Chapman University in Orange, where we kind of got a little bit introduced. We had already met before then, but I'm sure we'll probably come to that later. But that's when I started serving in a more official capacity, starting out kind of playing piano for churches. And then my sophomore year of college, I was basically the worship leader at our church. It was down in Palma Valley. I don't know if you guys know where Palma Valley is. It's off of Highway 76 in San Diego. So I was living here in Orange and driving out to Palma Valley, about an hour and a half away. But we had such a great pastor, and it was such great teaching that it was a joy for us. We would go out to serve among the orange and avocado farmers, and it was almost like a mini vacation every single week for us to get to be part of this church. And very similar in style in terms of the preaching style to Pastor Mike, expository preaching. In fact, the pastor at that church did some of his doctoral work with Pastor Mike. So there was something that we really loved, and Carly and I were going to church together at that time, even before we were married, and serving together on the worship team. And then, that takes us through kind of our college years. I'll pass it over to Carly now.
So I actually have lived in Orange County my entire life. Grew up in Orange County and also grew up in a Christian home. Very grateful for God to have placed me in a Christian family with Christian parents and 2 sets of Christian grandparents, so quite a legacy of faith. And so grew up going to church. I knew the story and I knew the idea of it, but it really wasn't until I got to college when, as my mom put it, you needed to make your faith your own and not try to lean on our faith. And I like to think that every seed that was planted from early childhood, all the way through, and all the knowledge that I had, then at some point in time, God just told me I needed to make that my own. And I really hadn't surrendered to him and was trying to claim him as my own, but also hold on to my own lifestyle and kind of guard some of my sin that I didn't want to give up. Gratefully, God showed me how empty it was to live for what I wanted, and just drove me right to him. And then interestingly, this was when we were in college, and I knew we knew each other, but not well at the time. We weren't spending a lot of time together, but I did look at him as someone that was a strong Christian. I admired his faith, and I was praying at the time that God kind of got a hold of my heart and praying, please, God, surround me with people that are going to draw me closer to you instead of further away from you. And it was really quickly after that we started to, we were kind of driven together in situations where we had to spend a little bit more time together. And it's funny you say, you were, wanting to show off to the girls playing, showing off your piano skills. But it was actually his service and worship at this church was an hour and a half away from where we were living, and he was driving there every weekend to go serve at this little church in the orange groves out there. And when he told me that, and I'm at this point in my life when I'm really seeking after a stronger relationship with God, and then here's this young man telling me that he's driving down an hour and a half every week to serve the Lord. So it wasn't your piano skills, but it was your
So
your
God
heart.
answered that prayer just in a different way.
Yeah.
Different way. Yeah.
So it did work out. I appreciate the piano skills, but it definitely was his heart. I felt like that said a lot about his heart for the Lord, and so that kind of drove me to just really want to spend more time with Keith. So
That's awesome. So going back for both of you, I'd love to hear this. Where would you say that the love of music first started for you? Was there somebody that was influential in your life that really fostered that, or how did that happen for both of you?
For me, I would say that it was really innate. It was something that when I was a young child, I asked my parents for piano lessons. I wanted to do it. And then I started taking lessons, and I was like, I don't want to practice, like most kids do. But like there was a desire in me. I loved to sing. And to me, like piano was a way for me to be able to kind of like accompany my singing. It was always about singing for me. I loved the sound of the human voice. I was kind of naturally inclined to music, and it became something that I always loved to do. I sang in church choirs. I sang in my school choir, and I couldn't wait for it. It was like the highlight of my week every single week at school and at church. And performing in the musicals, like we did, a kids musical at my church, and so I was involved in that as well. And it was always a passion of mine. And I was a sports kid too, so I was playing baseball and soccer and basketball. But about middle school, I felt like I kind of had to make a decision one way or the other, and it was a no-brainer for me by that point. I was like, I was still able to play sports and stuff through high school, but it was really music that I knew was going to be my calling.
Yeah, that's a tough question for me to answer. I don't have like a specific answer because I really don't remember a time when I didn't want to be singing all the time. I remember when I was very little, I went to a school that wasn't super close to my house, so I had a long drive home with my mom, and I remember making her sing "You Are My Sunshine" in the car on the way home so that I could make up harmonies. And I was elementary age, that was just kind of who I was. I guess it just was kind of like singing was just a little bit of part of my spirit. And did all the church musicals and stuff as a kid. And then I had a family friend who was about 5 years older than me, close, family that's very close with my family. And I definitely looked up to this girl, and she was in a lot of musical theater, and I kind of wanted to do what she was doing, and so she was at the high school, and I was in 6th grade, and they needed a little girl in the musical that they were doing at the high school, and so she, asked if I could come and try out for the part, and so I did this musical, and these high school kids were very sweet with me. They just built me up, and from there on, it was just like theater all the time. So musical theater really took my natural love for music and just made it something that I couldn't live without, made it this very special part of my life. And then, of course, getting involved with serving and worship and stuff has been the best outlet of that gift that God gave me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, it was more of an innate thing for you guys. If I just decided to have this innate thought to sing, is it too late for me, or do I have a chance?
It's not too late.
No,
it's not too late.
It is too late. I can tell you
Not
it's
too late
late
for anybody.
No, it's not too late.
Singing is a skill that you can learn.
But you
Now,
haven't-
obviously,
you haven't heard me, Keith. It is too late.
Yeah, we, it's something we talk about as music teachers, that obviously there are people that are going to be more, have that natural ability and are certainly inclined from a very, very young age. But I could tell you story after story of students that I've had come into my choir program over at Tesoro that couldn't match pitch. They couldn't, couldn't read music, I couldn't even recall, I would sing something to them, they couldn't sing it in tune back to me. But then by the time they graduate, they're able to, perform on stage and sing solos and this kind of thing. So it is a skill that you can learn, but it is harder for some people.
One of those kids ended up being the star of the musical his senior year. He couldn't match pitch when he got there as a sophomore.
Yeah, a kid that was one of the, I audition kids every fall, and he was one of the lowest scoring kids I ever had. And then by the time, this is before his sophomore year, and then 3 years later, he's, performing on stage as the lead in our musical and going on to perform in musical theater, in New York. So, yeah, these stories can happen too.
Dude, you're giving me hope right now.
Yeah,
Stop.
you got it.
So, Keith, I'm going to be Keith's project, and I'm going to surprise you all. At the end of one of my flyovers, I'm going to sing the takeaway, and you're going to know that Keith worked a miracle. No, I'm just kidding.
We might need 10 years for that, though. I don't know.
You need a lot more.
Plan for it in 2033.
There you go. But yeah, how did you guys meet? So we got a little bit of that, but yeah, talk to us about how you actually met.
So Carly mentioned we both were involved or she was involved in musical theater. I was too. That was, after kind of singing in choirs and stuff in junior high and doing the church musicals and stuff, I was kind of, what they say, bit by the theater bug. I did a show at the Buena Park Youth Theater, and was like, oh man, this is amazing. I love this, and got really into musical theater performing, and performed all the way through the end of my junior high and pretty much high school as well, like one show after another in all these different programs around Orange County. Some of you have seen productions at the Laguna Playhouse, or I did some stuff at the Downey Civic Light Opera and some of the youth theaters around this area, and just fell in love with performing, and so that was so because of that, we were both involved in the musical theater scene in Orange County, so we had kind of heard of each other and had a lot of mutual friends, and it's a pretty tight community in the
never
arts.
Performed together, though. Same companies, just not at the same
Yeah,
shows.
in fact, I saw her. We both, I think, saw each other in performances, but never, ever considered actually connecting. And then I had won a scholarship my senior year, a vocal scholarship through the city of Cyprus, and then Carly.
We both went to high school in the same city, by the way.
Yeah, I was at Brethren Christian High
Different
School
schools.
at Cyprus, and she was at Cyprus High, which is literally like a mile from one another. And I was going to Cypress EV Free, and Carly had come to Cypress EV Free before. Lives right on that corner of Ball and Valley View. So anyway, I had done this competition. Carly, she's a year behind me in school, so she was going to be auditioning for the same scholarship her senior year. And why don't you tell the rest of this?
So I needed an accompanist, and a friend of mine, mutual friend of ours, just said, "Oh, what about Keith Hancock? He's already at Chapman. I had already, accepted, planned on going to Chapman the next year, and so they gave me his number, and the next part of the story kind of depends on who's telling it."
I feel like that's always the case with all.
So I'm going to tell it.
There you go. Go for it.
So anyway, I called him up, hired him to play, accompany for me for this scholarship audition. And so he came over. We rehearsed, this song. Went and did the audition. And it sounds like how romantic. He played the piano for you, and then you fell in love. It did not happen that way. We did not actually hit it off very well at all at the start. We can agree about this part. In my story, it's because he was very standoffish and a little snooty. And in his version of the story, it's the exact opposite. But my mom was there, and she can back up my version of the story.
Sounds like your story wins. Yeah.
I have witnesses. No, I think, in some cases, confidence can come off as snobbery, and in other cases, quietness can come off as snobbery. And so we both kind of got a snobby vibe off of each other. But then I did end up getting the scholarship, and the city was like, "Oh, this is so cool. You won it this year, and your accompanist won it last year. Let's bring you both back to perform for the ceremony of giving the scholarship." The funny thing is that we both agreed to do that, and the scholarship was worth like pennies. It was
a couple $100 bucks.
It was nothing. But for whatever reason, we both came back, and so we sang our first duet together at this ceremony, and then went to school together and did not speak. We were in the same choir, did not speak a word to each other for at least the next 6 months, probably. So you can.
Yeah, and then we kind of got thrown into this performance together. She basically was wearing this dress, and she needed someone to hold her key. And so I was like the first guy she saw.
Literally, I said, I need the first guy with a pocket is going to hold my key tonight for me.
So I held her key. So she kind of hung around with me for most of that night, fearing that I was going to just leave without, giving her key back to her. And so we ended up talking a lot. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness, we have so much in common. We, both love musical theater. We both done all these things. And
after the performance, my family, we invited him to come out to dessert with us, just because we had hung out that one night and connected so much.
Yeah, and pretty much from then on, it was like a fast track. It was almost like God had just shone the light on our, on our lives and made us kind of see what we were missing, and right at the same time, and and then we, started dating quickly after that, and then dated for about a year, and then got engaged for about a year, and then got married, and there we go.
That's such a cool story because when you started it, I'm like, oh, well, of course. You started singing together, and it was just, y'all got married 5 minutes after that. It's it's perfect. But it didn't work out that way. It was car keys that brought you two together. Car keys and pockets.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Well, thanks for sharing that. And now it wasn't love at first sight when they sung together. But they are here and they are doing well. Well, that's awesome. And I have to say this because Keith put it modestly that he plays sports and all this stuff. I look at people that are good at all sports, and I get a little jealous sometimes because I'm like, man, he is gifted across the board. Because I played one sport and I feel like I'm decent at that one sport, but you put anything else in my hand, not so good because I focus on the one sport. Keith is one of those people that I feel like everything that he touches, whether it's a ping pong ball or bowling ball or anything like that, he's just good, and he does it so modestly. He comes out to our staff events, and he's like, yeah, I played a couple times, and, I rolled this bowling ball a couple times, and he, like, bowls a 200 or something like that. And so when he says he played sports, like, the guy is good across the board as far as what he does. You're not going to say it. I'm going to say it. He is. He won't say it, but he is. And he even one time told me about, didn't you play ping pong with, like, James Worthy, or who were you beating?
I played Eldon Campbell.
Eldon Campbell.
Yeah, he was one of the centers for the Lakers back in the 90s, and I beat him 21-7. So
see, that's what I'm saying.
One of my great accomplishments in life.
His dad, Dale, used to work for the Lakers, so he got a chance to hang out with a lot of the Lakers. And I remember the first time hearing that, he was like, yeah, I played Eldon. I'm like, first name, just Eldon? That's what you call him. Yeah, I say Eldon Campbell, forward for the Lakers. He says Eldon. But, yeah, he used to beat up on NBA players as well in other sports, not basketball, I don't think. You didn't beat him in basketball. But anyway, so now, you've started your career, and you get into high school music, right? Was that the first step, or did you start at doing something different and then get into high school? Like, how did you end up being high school musical?
Yeah, I knew. So when I was the summer after my sophomore year of high school, I had this amazing musical experience where I got to join with the Orange County Master Chorale, performing with the Los Angeles Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl in a performance of Mahler's Eighth Symphony. And if you're not a classical music buff, this is like this huge performance where they bring this massive choir, massive orchestra in. And so I'm there as a 16-year-old standing on stage at the Hollywood Bowl with the LA Phil and just having this like once-in-a-lifetime musical opportunity. And from that moment, I knew that I was like, yes, I want to provide these types of experiences for students. I'd always wanted to teach. I knew that like teaching was a way of kind of passing on your knowledge and like making a difference in the next generation and getting to have like an insight into the lives of students and get to impact their lives in a special way. So it was always going to. I felt like I knew once I decided that I didn't want to perform for a living, because there was a short time in my life where I wanted to go on Broadway and do the whole Broadway thing. But I knew that the people and the lifestyle and the kind of the family dynamic that I had wanted for my own future, that was not going to be conducive. I knew that as a high school student. But I felt like teaching, okay, a stable career, every school needs a music teacher, right? So I felt like that was going to be a great, and having that experience and knowing that, man, this is what I want to do. Very uniquely, I'm at 15 years old. I pretty much knew what my career path was going to be. So I was able to just kind of start at Chapman, and I was in the music education program. I knew I wanted to teach high school choir. I graduated from Chapman with my teaching credential, and I got the job at Tesoro.
He was 22. He got the job like immediately after. Yeah.
So, and I've been there ever since. And so it was just like my career path was a pretty, and this is, I thank God for the clarity that I had at that age. I think that saved me from a lot of the searching that normally happens in your 20s and trying to figure out what you want to do. I knew what I wanted to do, and the dream job. It was a brand new high school at the time, if you know the area. The school was 1 year old. I got to be really the first choir teacher to come in and set up the program the way I wanted it to and watch it build. I mean, I had 35 kids in the whole choir program, when I started, and then I've been able to kind of watch it grow into a couple hundred now and get to perform in all these really neat places and tour around the world and have these amazing opportunities for the students that really was all kind of laid out for me when I was 15 years old.
Yeah, so I want you to talk about that a little bit more because, when you started at Tesoro, you said 30 students that had an interest were in the choir class, and then now you got hundreds, and I mean, even I'm assuming people coming from different areas to be part of your choir program. So I guess talk about just the growth there, like, obviously that was a God-given thing, but what have you seen and what has encouraged you just to watch these kids probably come in with little to no interest with choir, some that have a lot of interest that this becomes their thing? I guess what gets you going? What encourages you about that?
Yeah, it's such a amazing environment. If you're in like a dynamic choir program, there's nothing like it. And some of you, I'm sure, have had choir experience where you're standing up on stage and everyone's kind of doing the same thing and you're bonded together and you're making these beautiful harmonies, singing some of the best music that's ever been written for the voice. And it's not just a great musical experience, it's also a great social experience. There's something that happens when you're a choir and you're bonded together and you all have that passion for music, and you're doing something you love with the people that you love. And I'm also really intentional about building relationships, so we do a lot of like team building and social activities to make the musical experience enhanced, because I feel like a group that is more bonded together socially is going to also be bonded together better musically. And so I think that's something that once people experience that, they don't want to leave. And so, over the years, because of the quality of the music that we make and the quality, like they don't want to leave their friends. When they're a part of something like that, it's like they can't imagine going a year in high school without it. And so, and that kind of just like kept on growing and growing over the years. And as my skills as a teacher and as not so much a teacher, but of a facilitator of learning and facilitator of kind of helping the students, find their passion and helping the students, find other people that they can be connected to. It just kind of evolved into this like machine, and that we've got, all these different choirs that the kids meet together, and we take all these trips together and we tour around the world and get to perform, from Carnegie Hall in New York to the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. We've been all around the world and sharing our music, and there's something really, really special about it. And it's just been amazing for me to kind of sit back and kind of watch, and think back to where we started, which was very, very humble. As I was kind of learning my craft as a teacher, the program was able to kind of build along with my own skills as a teacher, and it all kind of worked out very well together.
If I could add,
yeah, please.
Keith's classroom, if I can paint a picture of it for you, across the back, there's kind of this hanging sign that says, "We are family." And then just about every inch of the walls is covered with pictures of students from, the past 20 years. All over the walls at choir events, singing solos, traveling. And that's kind of, I think that paints a picture of what his program is very well, because that sign that we are family, they are. The music is a vehicle for creating this special bond of young human beings who crave special bonds with other people and need a safe place to come and be and do something meaningful together. And so I think, there's a lot of things that Keith does that creates magic, really in the classroom. You've seen his musical skills. He's obviously a very talented musician, but I think what truly makes him a great teacher of teenagers is that he loves teenagers. He really genuinely cares about these kids. They are important to him. Every single one of them has meaning in his life, and he wants more for them, and he wants them to have what they have with each other. And so I think that really is where the special spark of his career has been, is in being able to really create that special family of kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I got a chance to witness it. I remember when we went to breakfast a few months ago. I felt like I was with a celebrity in a sense, because he had like some of his former high school students come in, and they're like, Mr. Keith, and I'm like, who are you, dude? I thought we were just having break. And he was like, yeah, I had that student was with me 3 years ago, and this is one of my current students, and all these. And so it's just really cool to see how you've connected. And I think I even saw you over at the Liso Town Center after one of your performances. He always is seeking to go above and beyond with this group to make them a family and to make them bond. And so they had a concert, I think, and then they all went to Cafe Rio. So there's this huge group in Cafe Rio with Keith right there in the middle of all these high schoolers. I'm like, what? Oh, that's your group. That's your choir group. And they had just got through performing, and they went and ate together, and it was just a great vibe, and you could just see the connection within that group that he has. And so, yeah, I've seen that firsthand. I can only imagine just even being in the classroom. how much they love you and how much they're learning from you. Keith, when you look at it from a ministry perspective and how God's given you this opportunity to be in front of hundreds of kids each and every year, how have you seen God use that for His glory through you?
Well, one thing that I'm really, especially not thinking about this so much when I was an undergrad, you just think about teaching music. But what I've learned since being a full-time teacher is that I'm not just teaching music, and more importantly, I'm teaching students through music. So I'm using music, and music's just my thing. Just like a math teacher their thing is math. Music is my avenue to teach students. So it's much more important that the students leave my classroom with not just musical skills, but also skills on how to navigate life and decision-making and priorities and all the different things that go into just humans, okay? And I feel like I failed if all they get is music. So I'm a big proponent of teaching just how to live, how to live life. And so I'm also intentional about how I do that. Before the seniors graduate, I give them like a top 10 list of like things to think about, like just kind of life advice, things that I've learned over the years. But one thing that makes choir teaching so unique in this is that when you think about some of the most important examples of choral repertoire, okay, much of it is sacred. This one really started out, the earliest music that we have in choral music, in the Western tradition anyway, is music that was written for the church. It's sacred music. And so that gives me kind of an open door to be able to talk about, the repertoire that we're singing. Just like I do with any piece, okay, whether it's a sacred piece or a secular piece, we dive into the text and we analyze the text and we got to figure out, okay, what does this mean and what was the composer's original thought in this? That's something that we do with every single piece that we sing. Well, given that a good percentage of our music is sacred, and this also applies to, we can't teach choral music without teaching the African American spiritual and without teaching American gospel music. That's a part of our own country's, like the fabric of our own musical history. And so it would be an injustice for me to not include that music. And so that gives me an open door to talk about, okay, who was Joshua? Who was David? Why was David mourning here? Okay, what is this? I will sing to the Lord with all my heart. Like what? So we sing all these pieces, oftentimes in foreign languages, and so we translate the text and we talk about, okay, what does this mean? And so that gives me kind of an open door to talk about sacred things in a secular environment. And while you might be under the impression that you can't say the name of God in a public school, well, it's part of my curriculum. Okay, it would be like a math teacher not talking about Pythagorean theorem. It would be, it's so much a part of the fabric of what we do that it's just a natural part of our curriculum. And so that gives that and I try to take as many, opportunities as possible to, to talk about, obviously, here and my work here and, kind of what I'm about outside of just, being a music teacher. And so the students, know that I work here and, I talk about, just last week prepping for Easter, and that's part of kind of our normal conversation, even in the classroom, but really more focused in terms of the repertoire that we sing. There's so much of it that lends itself to ministry opportunities too. And just the connection that I have with students, it enables me to take those relationships to the next level because, most teachers, they get to have their students for 1 year. It's like, okay, you take Algebra 1, you never see that teacher again. Well, when kids take choir at Tesoro, I oftentimes get to have them for 3 or 4 years. And we take these trips together, and we go to these performances together, and we're going to festivals. And so it enables me to have a deeper relationship with students that transcends what most teachers and students are able to have. And so that kind of gives me an open door to speak into their lives in a deeper way. And for them, upon graduation, it enables me to have some of those conversations, gospel conversations, and just conversations about, religion and that kind of go beyond just our subject matter too.
Yeah, that's excellent. I remember I can't remember the gentleman's name, but you had recently brought one of your former students here, and then you introduced me to him. And so just to see, all of that, the investments and the seeds planted from the beginning of getting to know them is really the big thing. It's like you get to know them, where they are, what they're thinking through, and that allows you to have the opportunity to share, what you do, and, how you love the Lord and why you do what you do and all those things. But again, I think for all of us, just to take away from that is just to understand just the patience and the investment that we need to have in those that are around us. And right, if we want them to hear the good news of the gospel and how we live our lives and how we trust Christ with our whole life, then we need to be prepared to say, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, and be patient with that and understand that we should build a relationship, because that allows us to have that avenue to do as you're doing, is to be able to share the truth with these kids and know that, Keith loves them because he spent so much time with them. He's taking them on trips. It is about that at the end, right? At the end of the day, it's about the gospel. We want to see all of them saved, but there's a lot of just love and care that's invested with that as well, for you to be able to have that opportunity to do that. So that's great. And being able to hear, these trips. And I know sometimes you can hear this and you think, well, I guess that's what most choir teachers do. This is not what they do. Not at all. Keith, again, is looking to go above and beyond, taking these trips and all of these things. It's not like the school is like, yeah, we'll pay for all of that. No, they're not paying for that. Many of them are having to raise money and to go on these trips, and it's been tremendous, and so much so. He's even won a few awards. He won't talk about that, but I will. He's won a few Grammy Awards. And check, I put one up here because I want you to see it. Like look at that. That's not Photoshopped, right? Because that's something I would do. I'd Photoshop myself waving at the Grammy, but no. But, I mean, you see this, and again, I'm not putting that up there just to say, like, look what but this is how much he cares for these students, and he's going above and beyond. And this is not your average choir teacher, able to do through you and Carly as well, and your support and care for these students as you meet them as well, is tremendous. And I think God is blessing that by continuing to give you a bigger platform and more students, because you're doing what we want Christian teachers to do in the public school now. Right? There's not fear away from it and say, hey, I got to run away from this. No, we need Christians in the public school, probably more than ever now, and we need to be sharing the truth with them and getting creative, because, yeah, they are cutting off some ways of doing that. But like you said, when it's in the fabric of things, and a lot of what we learn in schools now, it's rooted in Christianity. There's ways to get there, and there's strategic ways that you can approach it. You have to put in some work to do that and be praying about it. And I think you have done that in a tremendous way, and God's blessing that with awards and with, like I said, relationships, more importantly, for you to be able to bring people here to church. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Carly, I would just ask you before we transition to the next part of it is, like, what have you seen? I guess what is the biggest thing you've seen just watching your husband being able to have the impact on these students? Obviously, you grew up in the music world and choir and stuff. What have you seen that's the biggest difference from what he's doing with the students than you've seen in any other, choir?
Yeah, what's been fun for me is that we were already engaged when he got this job, and we were married right after his first year, and so I got to really have that front row seat and watch it grow. And even right at the beginning, he was very young when he first took the job at Tesoro. There's one student in particular that I always think back to as kind of like the first sign that Keith was going to be able to achieve really special things. This particular student had a lot of learning challenges, was otherwise a typical student, but had, I think maybe severe dyslexia, things like that just made school very hard for him. And a lot of times, for kids where school is really hard for them, they start to, kind of turn away from wanting to do that work. It gets frustrating. It's hard. They build up a wall. There's kind of a tough exterior and a tough shell around them. And this student had kind of, gotten into that mode in high school. And I think this was your first year that I'm thinking of. he had this choir of 30 some, kids, and this was one of his kids. And here this student struggled so much in his classes, but he was very musically gifted, songwriter, singer, pianist. And initially I think there was a little bit of butting heads, because you're trying to get students to behave themselves at school, and this student was rebellious and had that tough shell. And then Keith found an in with this kid and found a way to connect with him and show him that he cared about things that this kid cared about. And the relationship just changed. And suddenly this choir, that then grew over the next couple of years, really became for this student, the reason to continue coming to school, the reason to finish school, the reason to get up in the morning. And he went on to experience, he continues to experience a lot of success. He's a recording artist and songwriter, and he's had some big successes in that area. He even came back to do a song of his that had a good following. Teach it to the kids, have the kids sing along with it, and he was able to share then with he's now in his 30s, but able to come back and tell these teenagers, like, this is so special what you got. This is so special what you got here. And as I kind of alluded to before, Keith has a lot of talents that make him great at his job. When people say, like, what do you think, parents will ask me, or, people in the community, what do you think it is that really, makes him that Grammy award-winning teacher? And I say it's love for students. It's, as he said, it's not music first, And I know a lot of good music educators who, they love music. They're very skilled and they're very, very gifted at music. And they went into music to create great music with students, and that's wonderful. It's a great thing. But for Keith, as much as he loves music, it's never music first. It's always kids first, and that shows. And kids know that. And kids also know when somebody really genuinely cares about them, and there's nothing phony about his care for these kids. He's there for them, and they know that. And for them to each have that special adult in their life that they can always count on, beyond then what that creates from between student to student, the bond that they have with each other, they can count on him, and they can count on him 20 years from now. And I think that's what makes what he does so special. It's students first always, and music second.
That's great. And you all had those teachers growing up. You probably remember one specific teacher or one specific person that just cared for you more than anybody else. It's one thing to do the job, right? Just to do what's on the job description, but it's another thing to say, hey, I care for you as a person, and then the job is secondary. And yeah, just caring for people has that lifelong impact that you've been able to make. So, so grateful for that, and so grateful that God continues to bring you new students every year. They get to experience that, and they remember that, right, for many years to come. It's very cool. One other thing I wanted to spend a little time on is, we had Keith up here. I don't know, you guys don't remember First Kings, so you probably don't remember the last time we had Keith, but you do remember what we were praying for, because we've been praying for a while, and that is their son Chase and their entire family with this. And Keith was up here last summer before his major surgery that he had, and we kind of talked through it. And there's been some updates that I'd love to get from you and Carly. And if you're not on our prayer line that gets sent out every week, they give updates on there, very detailed updates on what's going on with their family and with Chase. And I encourage you to continue to pray for them, and be praying for them weekly, just as they continue to seek God's wisdom in all of this. But I would love to get a few updates from you guys on how Chase is doing, and what's the latest that we can be praying specifically for.
Yeah, so Chase was, for those of you who aren't, we'll give you the update in terms of getting you caught up if you aren't familiar with our full story. Chase was diagnosed with autism before he was 1, and has been mostly nonverbal most of his life, and then developed epilepsy along the way, about 5 years old, and then and hasn't really been able to be controlled with medication. A lot of people, they get epilepsy, they can take medication, they'll control their seizures. Well, Chase's has never really been controlled with medication. And so, last summer we had his pretty significant brain surgery that was supposed to, or at least the hope was that it would eliminate his seizures. Well, after, we got about a month of relief, and then the seizures came back. They started coming from different areas of the brain. And so, although since the surgery we have seen a tremendous amount of benefit from the surgery, the seizures are not as frequent and they're not as severe. And they're not having this, we were seeing upwards of 80 to 100 a day at its worst. And since then, we haven't seen that kind of cycling behavior where we see him every 15 or 20 minutes. We may see more sporadic, throughout the week. But since the surgery, we've had some other challenges that have kind of come up through in the last 6 months or so. Carly, you want to maybe address that?
And there's a lot of mystery, so there's not a lot of here's what happened and here's why and then here's how it's manifested. There's still a lot of mystery, really, when it comes to the brain. In fact, Chase's neurologist, when we first met her, he had this one medication and it worked really well for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden it just completely failed, and we ended up back at the hospital. And I said, "Is this what happened? Why did this work and then it didn't?" And she said, "Neurologists are always guessing," and to me it's such strong evidence of a creator, because here our brightest and most brilliant minds, they're guessing when it comes to this brain that God has given us. But after the surgery, things were very good for about a month. We didn't have any seizures. He was doing very well. He was, very happy, very light, very him. And then the seizures started to creep back in. And then we started to see these other symptoms coming along with those seizures that are severe obsessive compulsive disorder behaviors, aggression, anxiety, and kind of loss of interest in his things that he loves. And so, we're back to dealing with the doctors and back going up to the hospital for more tests and stuff. And so we've tried a couple of different treatments, but we're only seeing improvement for a short period of time, and then it comes back. So essentially, what it comes down to is there's some sort of inflammation in his brain, very likely autoimmune, and finding a solution to that is the challenge. So, we are a family that will, when they say, well, we could try this, but it will be very hard on you, do it. We'll do it. We'll do it. We'll do anything that we can for him. But, we are in what we're pursuing right now. We are seeing progress, but it's a slow progress. We've connected with other families who've kind of been through this situation, and people have seen improvement and relief and essentially recovery from what we're seeing right now. This, what could be considered, an autoimmune encephalitis, along those lines. But it's not a quick fix. We had hoped that last June was going to be kind of the end of our journey, with hands up to the Lord and trusting that, there are no guarantees. It's up to him whether, he's going to allow those medical interventions to do as we hope or not. So right now we're still in the thick of it, and we've got all these other, surprises kind of coming in and out. It's very draining and it's very difficult because we don't know from moment to moment, from day to day, which Chase we're going to get. We might get, we're seeing more of him coming back, his language coming back, his normal behaviors coming back, but he may have a couple of hours, on a certain day that we don't know when it's coming, where all of a sudden he's consumed with obsessive compulsive thoughts. And it's getting less frequent, so we're so thankful for any progress that can be made, but it is a long journey, and it's a trial that's not over, which is it's difficult, but ultimately, God has promised that everything is for our good. And so when we continue to pray, and we know so many of you are praying, we have people telling us all the time, I'm praying for Chase. Every time you say that to us, it means so much, because that is the most important. We have all these medical interventions that we're trying, but the most important thing that we need is that prayer, because that petitioning to the Lord is ultimately the most important part of it. But the answers to our prayers haven't been yes yet. The answers can be no, the answers can be not yet. And while we're waiting, it's challenging. But we do trust that we know when the answer is no or not yet, it is ultimately for our good, whether we can see what that good is. It is for our good. God has made that promise, and He keeps everyone. So.
Amen to that. And yeah, so please be praying for them and reach out to them. Let them know you're praying. And we know as believers, I know oftentimes we say, I'm praying for you. Is there anything? Praying is the biggest thing that we can be doing, right? Because we know that God is the one that's in control of all of this. Neurologists, all the doctors, all of those things. God can change that today if He wanted to, according to His will. But He is in control of all of those things. So I know that prayer is the most powerful thing that we can be doing for the Hancock family, and I just encourage you all to continue to do that as they continue to seek wisdom from God on next steps and all of those things. And I know it was just having to move a lot of things to get both of you here, and so I want to extend thank you for being here and making the time for both of you to come here and lead us in worship, which was beautiful, and then just being able to sit here and just chat with you and get to know more about you so that we can be praying for you. So before we conclude, I know I asked you to put some prayer requests that we could have and continue to pray for, but could you verbalize this for us, for both of you, and that way we can hear it from you a little bit more.
Okay. For me personally, a lot of my prayers is on Chase. Please, Lord, help Chase. For me personally, just the endurance. It is a difficult parenting path, and there are days where that burden is heavy, and on those days, sometimes it's very difficult for me to climb out of the heaviness of the burden, and to, continue to use my time wisely, to continue to have that very deep-seated trust that God loves us, that He is, working things out. So the endurance of being able, we know there's no end date for us that we know, okay, we just have to make it to this point. There may not be an end date. We may be at this, for the rest of our time on earth, but that as those days that are extra heavy come, that I would just have extra endurance to be able to keep going, to keep living for the Lord, to keep modeling that for my sons, and for just being able to rally, honestly, to keep my spirits up and moving forward, and being there for my whole family.
Excellent.
For me, it's focusing on my discipleship and evangelism efforts with my son, with Joel, our older son, who we've been, it's been awesome to see how much he has grown. I mean, he's like, for those of you who might have seen Joel running around the church as a kid, he's a completely different kid now. He was also diagnosed with autism very early, but has made tremendous strides, and he loves being here. He's here all the time, and has taken quite an interest in apologetics and asking the tough questions and trying to find answers to those. And so kind of talking him through a lot of that stuff over the last year has been I guess I would say a great joy to that he's even, asking those questions as an 8th grader and just wanting to know, but also, continuing my evangelism efforts with my students, with my alums, I put the verse up there in Mark 8:36. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? How many hours of every day do we spend on things that are all about gaining the world? Whether it's there can be good things, but really and ultimately not enduring things. Just steering those conversations and prioritizing the right things in the things that I do and the things that I say, and continuing to make more of an impact for the kingdom is certainly a prayer of mine. And then for the both of us, certainly as Carly kind of alluded to already, the strength through this trial. There are some really, really tough days, as you can imagine, and when we're trying to figure out the best way. You can read every parenting book in the world, and it does, not every strategy is going to work, in this kind of circumstance, and trying to just make the right decisions and be supportive of one another and have patience with Chase and stay grounded in our faith and all that. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we will certainly be praying for that. We'll add that to our prayer list, but let's give a huge thank you to the Hancock family for being here this morning and blessing us with this time. And I will conclude us in a word of prayer for you guys. All right, let's do that. God, we love this family. We love the Hancocks and how you have blessed our church with how you have gifted them, not only musically, but just how they love other people and how they care for people, as we've heard this morning, just in how Keith is caring for students and seeking to know more about them ultimately so that he can should be able to share the gospel with them and share the truth that he believes and that he knows is true through Christ. Lord, I do pray for this family, Lord, as they are going through these trials just with Chase. Lord, I pray that you would provide them with encouragement, that you would continue to bless them just as they remain steadfast. Just think of that verse in James, is blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, and that through the test of time, Lord, that he will receive the crown of life. Lord, I pray that you would keep their eyes focused on you through all of this, knowing that you do not waste any trial in any of our lives, Lord. But I pray that you would strengthen them. I know there are hard days, as Carly spoke about and Keith has spoken about. But, Lord, I pray that we as a church would just seek to pray for them more and to encourage them, and that you would lift them up, knowing that you are in full control. You are the great physician, Lord, regardless of however many doctors and surgeons that there are, Lord. We know that you are the one that grants them wisdom. You are the one that created us. Every cell in our body has been uniquely created by you, Lord. And so we know and trust your good and perfect plan. And I just pray that you would just give them strength and endurance and steadfastness in the coming days, weeks, and months, Lord, that you would keep them strengthening one another and allow the church family to strengthen them through prayer. So we just thank you for the time that we got to spend this morning with them. Pray that you would bless Keith and his efforts with his students. Allow that to continue to grow, that ministry. And Lord, I pray for their marriage, that you would allow their love for one another to grow more and more each and every day, and that you would save their children, save their boys, and allow them to just honor you and glorify you with their life. So thank you again for this family and how you continue to use them. And we just pray that you would continue to bless all that they do and that they would be honoring to you in their efforts. In Jesus' name, amen.